George Kilpatrick, inspiration for the nation, celebrating people we feel good about. We're so glad to be joined by. No, let me just start that. George Kilpatrick, inspiration for the nation, celebrating people we feel good about. We are pleased to be joined by Benjamin Lundquist, a leading voice for motivation and leadership in this country, one of the panelists for the My Brother's Keepers Fatherhood, the Real Manhood session that we've got for you Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, live on Facebook, Ben, and YouTube, and LinkedIn. He frequently speaks at high schools, universities, corporate and faith-based events, and is an author and host the Rise and Lead podcast, which is currently reaching over 90 countries around the world. Ben, so glad to meet you. When we say fatherhood, the real manhood, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, George, thank you so much. It's an honor to be on Inspiration for the Nation for just a few moments. Really excited about what we have coming up with our fatherhood panel next Tuesday. You know, when I think about fatherhood, I really think about men who are willing to step up and really unlock the potential for the next generation that will end up creating a ripple effect for years and years to come. And so I cannot express the immense role that fathers can play in the lives of their kids, their families, churches, communities, and schools. And so I really think about fatherhood and manhood as the intentional decision that men make to step up and to really own the influence that they have. And I think men don't understand how valuable and important the voice is that they hold inside of them. And that voice unlocks the potential of generations. And I have seen so many homes, either homes that have success or homes that have challenges. And George, so much, if not every time, when you look at successes or challenges, it is linked to, was there a father in the home? Was that father engaged? And did that father really take full ownership and responsibility of his influence? So fatherhood, as you can see, I'm passionate about this conversation, and it's going to be an honor to talk about this next Tuesday.
When you are speaking across the country to high school students, what are you hearing from them around this topic?
Yeah, I think for so many high school students, they really feel like they are doing their life and leadership journey on their own. And a lot of them will talk to me about how their mom is so stressed and she is carrying not only her own responsibility in the home, but for so many kids, the mom is carrying her responsibility and the fatherhood responsibility because the dad is either not present or is disengaged or has walked away from the home altogether. And so they talk about how stressed their mom is. And they also talk about how much they love their mom. And they talk about how they have this longing to reconnect with their father, somebody who can speak life into them, who can call out their potential, who can encourage them. And so I see a lot of young people, George, who have dreams and they have potential, but they feel like they are living and leading their life alone. And they have such a longing, a deep longing to have a father figure in their life, as somebody who can really step in as that guide, that mentor, and help them navigate the complexities of being a teenager in 2021 and beyond. And George, we know it is complex. And so I think the role of a father or a father figure, it's greater now than it has ever been. The challenges are so unique and the potential, George, is so great for what a father or father figure can do in the life of a high school student.
I love how you were clear to say father figure. Why?
I think it's important to realize so many men, they may not have kids of their own, but they are a father figure to somebody. And so whether or not a man has kids of his own or he doesn't, I think every man in society, in our community, in our schools, has a father figure role to play. And I'll just, looking at my own life, George, so many of the most influential men in my life they were beyond my own father, who was engaged in my life. But I think when you look at teenagers today, high school students, I think it really takes a village to raise a student and to help unlock that potential. And so I would just, I want to speak to every man and say, if you have kids, step up and be the best dad that you can be. If you had a great father, then carry on that legacy and even go next level. And if you're a guy who's listening and you think to yourself, I didn't have a dad. Well, this is your opportunity to provide for the next generation what you wish you had in your life when you were a young person and a student. And so I think all men have a responsibility to carry communities forward, either as a father or as a father figure.
Yeah, no, that's so important. Talking about Benjamin Lundquist. You're a man of faith, obviously, and so
Yep.
how does this influence? What role does the faith community have to play, and should they play in this effort around fathering?
Yeah, I think for me, my faith is really the foundation of my life, and it's where I draw my identity from. So the reason that I can walk as a confident man is because I know my identity, and I know my identity, I believe, comes from the worth and value that God has given me. And I think there are so many men that have dreams for their influence, but they don't believe in themselves and they don't believe in the worth and value that they have. And so when you think about, George, unlocking the worth and value of a student, no man is going to do that unless his worth and value is already unlocked inside of himself. We cannot give what we have not received. And so I think for me, faith is really saying, Benjamin, you are always a son of God. Your worth and value is already given to you. It's not earned every day. It can't be lost on your worst days. And so because of my faith, I walk with confidence, knowing that who I am is not determined by a social media post. It's not determined by what somebody else may say about me in a comment section or face to face, but my identity, worth, and value, I believe, comes from God. And so for me, that faith is my source of confidence. And then really a lot of my journey is helping to share that same message of worth and value and purpose and mission and calling with young men that I believe that God has given me. And that looks different depending on the setting that I'm speaking in.
As you were talking, I was thinking about the Frederick Douglass quote, but I can't remember what it is. But it has to do with it's far easier than to repair broken men. And I can't remember the other part of it. So maybe by the time I'll look it up real quick. But the issue is some of us are broken, right? And so as men and as fathers. And so what do you have to say to that man right now? And what in your own life have you had to experience that made you feel that way?
Yeah, I actually just, George, put up an Instagram quote about this today. What I would say is, I'm a work in progress, and I own that 100%. That I am a work in progress, and I am focused on progress, not perfection.
Okay.
And when you look at the generations that we want to impact, a younger generation would rather follow fathers and father figures who are real than fathers or father figures who always pretend to be right. And so your vulnerability as a man in sharing about some of those struggles, I think actually is to your advantage, because authenticity is currency. Nobody wants to hear a speaker talk about how perfect he or she is. They want to talk about how that individual has struggles just like they have, and they have been through challenges just like the audience has, and they've had mountains that have seemed immovable that they've been able to overcome. And so I think for me, I would encourage all fathers and father figures, you're a work in progress. So take it one day at a time and make it your goal to be a little better than you were yesterday, and just keep moving forward.
But the hardest thing for us to do, Ben, is to admit that to ourselves and to show that to other men in particular, right? We got to wear the mask. We got to prove that we are all the things that we said we are going to be. And so help us through that idea of I've got to wear that mask all the time. And I'm going to give you this is the Frederick Douglass quote,
All right.
thank you, Google. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. How you feel about that quote? And then how do you see this idea of us having to prove ourselves with the men without allowing ourselves to be that transparent and authentic with one another and with the youth that we serve?
Oh yeah, George, I resonate with that Frederick Douglass quote so much. And I had heard a quote that was similar that said, the greatest impact you make with your life may not be what you do, but who you raise. In that your legacy is raising up that next generation. And I think, all of us, especially when you think about coming to the end of your time, your legacy will live out in those you invest in. So I 100% support that idea that in raising up the next generation, in investing in the next generation, our legacy lives on, not in projects, but it lives on in people. And so, yeah, I think there's no greater investment that we could make than investing in people. The return is not guaranteed, but we have the greatest chance, I think, at leaving a legacy and making our mark on the world when we think about really investing in the lives of people. And I think you, George, we can both relate to the fact that you wouldn't be on Inspiration for the Nation hosting this incredible platform. I would not have the Rise and Lead podcast that's in almost 100 countries around the world if somebody had not mentored us. And if somebody had not opened a door for us, those coaches, pastors, teachers, father figures. And so I think the reason that we're here is because somebody had done that for us. And so I absolutely think we have the privilege to carry on that for the younger generation. To your question about, the mask wearing. I think there's a point in the journey of every man when we recognize that we have been wearing a mask, and we just have to own that for what it is. And I think there is a pivot point or a fork in the road that we have to come to, where we're going to have to make a decision. Are we going to continue to wear the facade, or are we going to live from a place of courage and in a safe environment, take the mask off so we can actually become the truest, strongest versions of ourselves? And there's an author, speaker named Brene Brown, and she talks about, I know, George, you're familiar with her. She talks about how really vulnerability is the way that we overcome some of the shame that has caused us to put on a mask in the first place. So for me, the fact that I know my identity from God gives me the courage, George, to be vulnerable so I can take that mask off in the right group, in the right setting, and I can begin to find power in vulnerability. And vulnerability, taking off the mask, doesn't mean you do that on Instagram. It doesn't mean you do that from the pulpit. It doesn't mean you have to do that from Facebook, but it means you intentionally are finding a safe community where you can authentically share your journey. And I think when you do that, what I have learned along the way is when you shine light on something, that thing that's holding us back, it loses its power. And so when we shine light on our shame and our insecurities and our shortcomings, it releases those things from having power over us, because we have shone a light on the things that were masking us for so long. And so it's a process, and I think it's a journey it's not going to happen overnight, but it's over a lifetime. But I think that's one step I would encourage men to take. You got to find a place where you can be vulnerable. And I'll just say, for every man, that is one of the most courageous steps that you can take as a man, is to be vulnerable in a safe, appropriate space about your struggles and who you are, so you can learn. And one truth that I love, George, is this: our past is not a life sentence, it is a life lesson. So being vulnerable is not about you being shamed. It's not about you being trapped, but it's about, I think, you being able to learn what you can learn from your past so you can move forward and make your mark and impact on the future.
I like how you said it's not a life sentence, it's a life lesson. Okay, one thing people can do right now.
Yeah, I would say this in the next 24 hours, I would encourage all men, have a conversation with one person. And maybe that's just a life update conversation. You're calling a relative, somebody you trust, but just update somebody on what you're doing in life, what some of your hopes and dreams are for the future. But I think that journey toward being vulnerable, going after some healing so you can find your strength, it can start with a single conversation. So in the next 24 hours, whether it's by text message, phone call, on a direct message, have a conversation with somebody you trust about your desire to grow, to move forward, and to reach your full potential.
That's Ben Lundquist, one of our panelists this Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We're live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Check us out. You can go to my YouTube page, George Kirkpatrick, and we will be there live. Inspiration for the Nation. Ben, we're looking forward to seeing you. Inspiration.
Thanks so much, George.